So 4.5 introduces the fourth and final market structure in imperfect competition. Well, really the third imperfect competition, but the fourth market structure we looked at. So the good thing about oligopolies is that there is not actually a graph that you have to learn. But there is this grid, this 2x2 grid that we're going to see that you've got to learn how to determine who has an advantage. And so that's what you have to take away from oligopoly. But what is an oligopoly? Other than it's real fun to say. More competition, or I guess you've got less firms than monopolistic competition, but less monopoly. So it's kind of in between monopolistic competition and monopoly. So typically there's somewhere 8, 10, 12 major producers in these markets. Cell phone service providers are a great example. That if we were to name, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, go through, we're probably only going to come up with 6 to 10 major businesses in that market. That's an example of an oligopoly. So there's a few enough number of firms that collectively they can control the market like a monopoly, but they're all individual firms. And so they're all competing against each other, but they have to strategically make choices about what is best for their firm as well as what is best for the rest of the market, because they're all kind of in this together. And so it becomes a big game of chess or what we call mutual interdependence, where they've got to do what's best for everyone else and themselves at the same time. Meaning, if Verizon were to drop their prices rock bottom, well, they're going to steal some customers in the short run, but in order to compete with that, or in order to compete with Verizon, everyone else is going to have to lower their prices as well. And so then all of the cell phone service providers lower their prices, which is great for consumers, but from a business standpoint, they're going to lose a whole bunch of profit. And so long term, it doesn't benefit Verizon or the other firms for them to make that rogue decision. And so they've got to kind of do choices that are going to benefit everybody, because then they're going to be more profitable. Or what they call strategic pricing is the same thing. How they set those prices to be most profitable. Cereal companies, you really only got like 3 big ones when you get down to it. Car companies, looking at manufacturers, Ford, GM, Toyota, whatever. There's not that many major producers in that market. You're seeing more, but not enough that it's really become monopolistic competition. So they've got high barriers to entry and exit, meaning it is difficult to enter into the industry and compete with existing firms. That if you want to start a business to compete with Verizon, that's going to be tough to do, because it's a huge corporation. There's a lot of startup costs. There's a high technical side of things, and so new firms have difficulty entering into this market. You see ownership of raw materials. That if there's just a couple firms that have access, once again, they've got an oligopoly, because new firms cannot enter into that market. So the big takeaway from 4.5 is what we call game theory. And game theory is that strategic pricing, doing what is the most beneficial decision for all of the competitors in the market. Where are they all going to benefit the most? And that's what we refer to as game theory. If you ever take any upper level economics courses, for those that might actually end up in this field, there's entire courses of study just on game theory and how this controls different markets. But has anyone ever seen A Beautiful Mind? Movie about John Nash. He's in it. So you can say he was a Nobel Prize-winning economist and mathematician, but he was also a paranoid schizophrenic, which is what makes the movie pretty good.
Was he like a janitor or something? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, I haven't seen that.
That may be like Good Will Hunting. But he was brilliant too. I don't know if that's a true story. John Nash was a real guy, though. There's a movie called A Beautiful Mind. Russell Crowe played the role, and he goes crazy with all these conspiracies. But he was a really smart economist and mathematician that kind of re-revolutionized game theory. But it's a good movie if you ever watch it. So, the way game theory works in AP Micro is you have 2 firms, and they each have 2 choices. And so in this case, you have firm 1 on the left, firm 2 at the top. They have 2 pricing choices. They can price high or they can price low, depending on where they're going to be most profitable. And so it shows you the combinations, that if they both price high, then they each get $20. If they both price low, they each get $10. Or if one of them prices low and the other one prices high, then they walk away with $30. But sometimes they know this, sometimes they don't. If they are able to communicate and say, hey, if we both price here, then we're each going to get $20. That's pretty good. Now, if they agree upon it and the other one stabs the other one in the back, then, yeah, they can end up here or there. It's just kind of depending on how trustworthy they are. But this is what the whole point is. If they, what we call collusion, where they work together, collusion's illegal. They can't outright work together and set prices, but they can all kind of pay attention to what the other firms are doing and set prices that way. But it really depends, are they actually going to act in the same, or are they going to try to do their own thing, which there is, I guess it's not in there. It's also an economic teaching tool called the prisoner's dilemma, which is where you and a friend of yours commit a crime and you get arrested, you get called in for questioning, and they pretty much say, look, if you both confess, you're going to get 10 years. If you both deny, you'll get 20 years. But if one of you confesses and the other one doesn't, the other one gets 30 years for confessing and the other one walks away free. And so it becomes this conundrum of how well do you trust this other criminal to act accordingly? Because if you both deny, you may get 10 years, but it's better than 30 years. But if you deny and they confess, well, you get 30 years. And so it's, collusion's great until the other one stabs the other one in the back, and then it becomes a worse off situation. And so, it's really how much do you have that incentive to cheat or not. So the way you'll see it is more like this, that you'll have firm 1 on the left, firm 2 on the right, and we're looking for what we call a dominant strategy, meaning the firm is always going to choose that choice. Either they're always going to price high or they're always going to price low. Now, if they do one of each, then they do not have a dominant strategy. But the way you read this grid, and really the easiest thing to do is, if it'll let me draw on this, is when you're presented with this, come in, because remember, on the test, they're not going to be color-coded like this. It's going to be black and white print on the test. If firm 1's over here, go in, circle firm 1, and circle the prices on the left, because that's going to help you more easily see, because these blue prices here coordinate to firm 1. Red prices correlate to firm 2. The way this works is we say, all right, if firm 1 prices high, we're going to assume that is what they're going to do. Well, firm 2 has 2 choices. They can also price high and earn $50, or they can price low and earn $90. Obviously, $90 profit is better than $50. So if firm 1 prices high, firm 2 is going to price low. We'll circle that. All right, if firm 1 prices low, firm 2 has 2 choices. They can price high for $40, or they can price low for $10. Well, 40 is greater than 10, so they're going to price high. So they're going to do the opposite of what firm 1 does. Because here, they're going to price low. Firm 1 prices low, they're going to price high. We would say that firm 2 does not have a dominant strategy because they do the opposite choices each time. Then you flip it, and we say, all right, if firm 1 is going to price high, it gives firm 2 2 choices. They can price high for $100, or they can price low for $50. Well, 100 is better than 50, so they're going to price high. If firm 2 prices low, it gives 2 choices. Price high for 60, price low for 20. Well, 60 is better than 20, so no matter what, firm 1 is going to price high. That's what we refer to as a dominant strategy, because no matter what, firm 1 is always going to price high. Firm 2 is going to price dependent on what firm 1 does. The concept of this isn't that bad. The difficult part of these game theory grids is just separating which numbers belong to which firm and then actually going through and picking the right numbers. That's the trickiest part. It's just getting in the habit of the actual going through and comparing the numbers, not the concept. But questions so far on this? Do we at least get the idea? You'll get more practice working with the grids, and that part will become easier. But like I said, go ahead and designate, hey, firm 1, I'm going to put squares, and that way it's easier to kind of navigate these boxes. And it circles it for me. How convenient is that? So, anyways, firm 1's dominant strategy is to price high. So we can see those two there again. Here, dominant strategy does not exist. The one with the 2 circles. That's what we refer to as Nash equilibrium. That's that whole John Nash I just talked about a second ago. So on the test, if they give you a game theory grid, you're going to have to go through, determine whether the firms typically have a dominant strategy or not, and then they're going to say, what is the Nash equilibrium? Well, it's the one that always has both of them circled. This choice for firm 2 to price low and firm 1 to price high is the most mutually beneficial situation or outcome. Yes, individually, the firms could be better off, but together, this is the most mutually beneficial decision. If they work together, would be where they want to produce. Now, if they go rogue and do their own thing, such as here, firm 1 can earn more money. But that whole Verizon example, if they've kind of got to do what's best for themselves and best for the other competitors in the market, that would be your Nash equilibrium. Mutual interdependence, what's going to be best for everybody. And so when I ask you what's the Nash equilibrium, well, find the one where the two things are circled. You can have two Nash equilibriums. They threw that one out there 2 or 3 years ago on the AP test. As they put in one of the FRQs, it was a game theory grid, and it actually worked out where you had two Nash equilibriums, which was weird. And so that was them presenting it in a way that most people had never looked at, because I'd never seen them do a double Nash equilibrium before. But it is possible, just the way it works out, that you can have two mutually beneficial situations. So just kind of make a note of that it is possible. So let's run through one more, just as practice. So start here. Firm 1, if they price high, firm 2 has two decisions. High for 40, low for 60. What are they going to do? 60. There we go. So they're going to price low for 60. If firm 1 prices low, firm 2 has two choices. High for 70, low for 80. What are they going to do? 80. There you go. So firm 2 has a dominant strategy to price low. All right, flip it. Firm 2 is going to price high. They get two choices, high for 90, low for 80. What do they do? 90. There we go. That's 90. If firm 2 prices low, they can price high for 50, low for 70. 70. Firm 1 does not have a dominant strategy, because they're going to do different choices based on what firm 2 does. So firm 2 has a dominant strategy. Firm 1 does not. Where's your Nash equilibrium? Low. Yeah, low and low. Right there. Questions? We kind of see what's going on here. All right. So oligopolies have to use the strategic pricing. They do have a tendency to collude to earn profit, but outright collusion is legal. They can't outright set prices together, but they can kind of pay attention to what the other firms are doing, and it's a lot of gray area to do it. I think actually the coolest example I've ever heard is, I think back in the 40s or 50s, there was a bunch of construction companies that wanted to collude to essentially raise prices. And so in the world of construction, those companies have to put in a bid for a project. And whoever typically has the lowest bid gets awarded the project as the person who gets to build it. And so let's say there was 12 companies that were all working together to kind of raise the price of these bids, that they all made more money. Well, the way they did it is they were basing it off the phases of the moon when they were supposed to submit the bids. And so it worked for years that they were able to collude and no one could figure out the system. But they all got lazy, and essentially 11 of them would all set the same bid, and then one of them would be lower. And then like these 11 would set the same, and one of them would be lower. And there was a journalist that picked up on it, and essentially they got busted. But it was actually a pretty cool way to do it, that they made a lot of profit illegally by doing that, by that collusion. But anyways, if they collude, they still have that incentive to cheat, because they're always trying to earn the most profit. And then, obviously, they've got to make an informed decision based on those dominant strategies. So, oligopoly graphs, which you don't have to learn how to draw, but we're going to talk about if there was a graph, then what it would look like. So, price leadership is essentially follow the leader. There's always going to be one dominant firm. The other ones are just going to do what that dominant firm does. That's your price leader. Gas stations are kind of like this. If we have 4 gas stations on the corner and one of them raises their price, well, if that's the dominant firm, the other ones are going to raise their price as well. And so it helps increase the profits for everybody. But price leadership is based on one dominant firm controlling the decisions for everybody else. Collusion is still illegal. They cannot set prices, but like I said, it's essentially follow the leader of what are they going to do based on that one dominant firm that sets the prices for everybody else. Can result in price wars where they do actually try to compete or undercut each other, but eventually it's going to turn out that it's just going to hurt their profits if they try to do this, because they're all going to lower their prices, which is great for consumers, but it's going to cut into how much money they actually get to keep. So colluding oligopolies, which is illegal, it's called a cartel, where they set prices, and usually there is some kind of negative outcome for people that break the contracts, i.e. drug cartels, have some pretty serious consequences if you break the colluding prices. But the good thing is that a colluding oligopoly acts as a monopoly. So this is the third time that you've seen this graph. It was a monopoly in the short run. It was monopolistic competition. Well, it was a monopoly. It was monopolistic competition in the short run, and then now it is a colluding oligopoly. So it actually works for 3 of the market structures. But you should be able to read this graph by now. So remember, it's all based on MR equals MC. You set the price where it hits the demand curve, and then you can determine profit or loss for the firms. All right, non-colluding oligopolies. There is a graph associated with this, but AP or College Board has specifically said this graph will not come up on the test, that it is outside the concept or outside the scope of what they want you to learn. But this is what it would look like if you ever take any more economic courses later on. And so it's what we call a kink demand curve. And so it actually has different elasticities based on what the price is for that market. And so here it's got a fairly steep demand curve, meaning it's more inelastic. And then once that price, if they were to try to set that price above whatever that equilibrium price is, well, no one's going to buy it. So essentially the demand drops because the price is higher than everyone else. It's kind of like a perfect competition. That if they raise the price, then essentially no one's going to pay for it. But it's also got a gap in the marginal revenue curve, and that's the real reason that they don't include it on the test, because it gets kind of theoretical of why there is this imaginary gap, or what we call price is sticky, because it's changing so quickly, we really don't know what's happening. But the good thing is, like I said, you don't really have to know this. We just kind of run through it, say if we were to graph it. There you go. So, all right, questions on 4.5. All right. I'll assign a worksheet on that because you really do need to get some hands-on practice with those grids. That's the big takeaway or the skill component for oligopolies, because they will put these game theory matrices on there. They can do a multiple choice where you have to answer the questions based on the grid, or pretty commonly they come up in FRQs too. So it's one of those things I would really know how to determine dominant strategies and Nash equilibrium.